person fit is the most important thing, because we can train skills. You can't train personality. Hi, my name is Richard Gill. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Drone Defense. And we envisage a future where drones are used to change the way we interact with, view, and eventually move around our planet. And everything that we do is trying to enable drone technology.
Incredible. And how did you get into this?
So I started my life professional life in the army, and I served for 10 years as an army officer, including tours of Iraq and Afghanistan. And it was in 2012 in Afghanistan where drones were really starting to be used, drones of all shapes and sizes, to find roadside bombs, to overwatch the battlefield and gather like really valuable life-saving information, which meant soldiers were safer. And you sat there and you scratch your head a little bit and then went, actually, all of these things that we're doing in the military would be equally as applicable in a civilian context. So you imagine inspecting a roof or a power line or a wind turbine. Believe it or not, 14,000 people every year in the UK are injured or killed falling from height. So if you could just, by using drone technology to gather that information and remove people from harm, it's got to be a positive thing. So that I left the army, I did my MBA, paid for by the army, which was great, and started up a drone inspection business first. And this was very early stages. This is in 2015. And as we went out to the market and spoke to like surveyors and farmers and other management companies, all we kept on hearing is that drones are bad. They used to invade privacy, they disrupt airports, they smuggle drugs into prisons. And I sat there and I scratched my head a little bit and said, actually, the risk to this, the risk to mass adoption of drone technology is about public perception. Is that people think it's bad, therefore it is bad. So we've got to address this. And at the time, nobody was providing like decent security solutions. So I clearly had a bit of knowledge about drones at this stage, and I had a bit of knowledge about security, given my former background. So I brought these two bits of knowledge together and launched Drone Defense in 2016. So we've just gone past our 5th birthday. And it's gone from strength to strength. The first customer of the business was the Home Office. And you just go, well, hang on, we're onto something here. If they picked us up, like on week 2 of launching the website, then clearly other people in the world have requirements for what we offer. And we've grown the business over the last 5 years, starting out as myself at home in my home office, to now 15 people in the company, and we're looking to grow to about 35 by the end of 2021.
Amazing. All sounds very positive. So when you're launching the business, you know you've got to build partnerships and relationships with fairly big organizations. So you mentioned the Home Office. Just from my research, I see you're working with Guernsey Prison as well. How do you get into these organizations? How do you form those relationships?
So one of the key things that I took, so part of my MBA, I looked at, I did a deep dive into high growth startups, and then looked at the key tenets that the founder needed and how the business should conduct itself. Because if you go to any business school student, they'll say 2 things: don't bring something new to market, something new into a new market, because you're destined to fail. And that's essentially what we did. There wasn't a drone defense industry, so there weren't any products to service that. The mantra goes, you bring a new product into an established market, or you change an established product into a new market, whereas we broke the rules. So the philosophy that I took, I really learned this from Crossing the Chasm, Geoffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm. And in early stage industries, they say you should talk an awful lot. And this is the method that I adopted. So I call it the red hat method. So I'd put a red hat on, and I would stand on speaker's corner and I would just talk a lot. And I went to a lot of events, and I just kept talking. And it's through that talking is that people then connect with you. And that's how we got Guernsey. That's how we've got to where we've got. It's just by being open and promoting this like positive future that we can see, and a really clear roadmap to get us there.
So it's really about putting yourself out there and making sure that people know about you and not waiting for them to come to you effectively.
Yeah, well, that will follow. So in an early market, so Simon Sinek puts this quite eloquently, is because the people who buy things in an early market know the things inside out. And he uses the analogy about the guy who buys the iPhone, who wants the iPhone on day one, and he queues up outside the Apple shop hours and hours before everybody else, because he wants to be first. And those people who want to be first know everything about it, about the product. They probably know more about the product than the people selling it. So that's, we adopted the same philosophy and spoke an awful lot. So those customers know where to find us. Very early in the market, we did drone defense as a name. For instance, it's a Ronseal name. It does exactly what it says on the tin. So a customer thinks, I've got a problem with drones. What do they type into Google? Well, they type in drone defense, drone security. So that organically put us as top hit on Google. And it's little things like that. It's coordinating these little 1% that give us a 10% head start. And that's what makes us be found on the internet. And that's how we get into these places. And it's been one hell of a ride.
And drone security, I think, is getting more and more publicity around the world, and more of a need for it. So countries in particular, so Israel and Dubai, have been very open about that they're really investing in it. And it sounds like the UK are as well. So is this going to be a case where we will see a lot of other companies popping up in a similar space? And how do you defend yourself against that?
Well, I think there was, if you remember in 2018, in December 2018, there was that incident at Gatwick Airport. 130,000 holiday makers had their holiday disrupted. 36 hours worth of major disruption to an international airport, and that was the tipping point for this industry. And so I sort of have this analogy of pre-Gatwick, post-Gatwick. And if you see the number of new entrants into the market post-Gatwick, it skyrocketed. So how do we defend ourselves? Well, we do it a number of different ways. Firstly, in the traditional manner about getting intellectual property patented, applying for trademarks, this type of thing. And that is sort of the traditional way of doing it. But we have to maintain a position as a forward thinker, a market leader. And by doing that, we still get those sort of interactions with organizations that we wish to. And you've got to remember as well is that we've had 5 years of doing nothing but this. So eating, sleeping, waking up, going to bed, nothing but thinking about this problem. Whereas our new entrants are coming at this with many tens of thousands of hours worth of work to do already. So that's probably how we do it the best way.
And talk to me a bit about your funding process. So how have you managed to fund the business, and what have the challenges been in doing so?
So I probably did it the hard way to start with. So I bootstrapped. So I managed to build up a little bit of a nest egg while I was in the army, which allowed me some space to sort of launch a business with a bit of capital and then have a bit of money to live off. And that kept me going for the first 18 months. And taking the bootstrap approach, I produced products, sold them, and took the revenue from those products to develop the next product. So I did this sort of organic development life cycle. And then I got to a point of where I was speaking to a US investor who are a systems integrator, corporate investor. And the founder just loved what we were doing. And he said, how can I help? And I said, actually, cheekily, give us £500,000 and we could go from here to here. And he said yes. So that's what got us on the investment journey. We took that money. We then took our proprietary drone detection system and put it through Home Office testing. So now we have that certificate that says we can perform alongside defense prime contractors. And that's a key differentiator for us, because we are a built for purpose organization, as opposed to a big defense prime that comes with the defense prime baggage and costs.
And what's that credibility done for the business? So having that certificate, has it made it easier to secure more business, or what's that done?
Well, it's interesting because we're in a really early market that we're in. Let's imagine a customer comes to us and goes, I have a problem with drones. So what does that actually mean? Because a prison will have a different problem to an airport, to a private individual, to a power station, for instance. So having some sort of assurance from government says that actually we do perform to a certain standard, in the same way a door lock performs to a certain standard so it can be insured. That alleviates concern from potential customer, because there's lots of people in the market that how I describe as selling snake oil. So they say their system can do everything. It's not been tested, it's not been verified, it's not been deployed. Whereas going through this process means that we have a high degree of assurance, and our customers can have confidence in what we're saying.
And you're growing the business in quite a, what sounds like a sustainable but a healthy rate, with growing the team and so on. And I can hear a lot of passion in your voice around this topic. So talk to me a bit about growing the team and making sure you're bringing on the people with the right passion, but also the right technical know-how.
And that has been probably the biggest challenge, to be honest, is how it's not like in established markets, we can go to the market and say, we need these key skills, because they don't exist. So what we're having to do is we've got to find as close a fit as possible and try and entice that person in. And it's really hard, because what we're doing is right at the very edge of what is possible. And there are very few people. So if I did a search, for instance, on sort of LinkedIn Recruiter about the key skills that I need, there's about 200 people in the whole country that do it, and 150 of them work in defence. So how do we get these people out of what are comfortable jobs? Well, it's a massive challenge, particularly for a startup who can't necessarily afford to pay the big salaries that these guys would expect. So we've had to adopt an approach where we partner with universities, and we have partnerships with Nottingham and Sheffield Uni, and we've sponsored some master's programs to then essentially create a pool of talent that we can draw upon. And it's been quite hard work. It's quite intensive to do that. And we have to train people up to the standards that we expect to deliver the technology that we need. And again, that's hard, because working in startups is nails, and trying to explain that to people coming out of university who would typically go into a graduate program with a big company to say, no, you've got to come to a startup and work all hours God sends, make mistakes, deliver product to customers who are demanding. That's been my biggest challenge over the last year, is getting the right people.
And how have you found, so even when you think you found the right person and they've got the right expertise, they want to come work up in startup life is not what a lot of people dream it is. So have you had that where you have actually onboarded the wrong people?
Yeah, massively so. So that's, like I say, this has been, startups generally are only one person deep as well. So that's a challenge. So we've had quite a high turnover in our tech team. I'll be honest with you, because people at interview say a lot of things, and then stark reality of coming into a business like this is really hard. To try and address that, I did a lot of work over Christmas I looked at Netflix's culture and look at Reed Hastings and No Rules Rules. And if you haven't read that book, it's amazing. I recommend that everybody reads that. And he talks about how you get the right people. The person fit is the most important thing, because we can train skills. You can't train personality. So addressing personality is been the thing we've done the most work on. So we've created this culture deck. So what I'm trying to do, in the same way as that we sold things in the early stages of the business, is put as much information into the market as possible and say, this is what we believe, this is why we exist, and this is the way we work. If you can connect with that, come and talk to us. And then what we've done is we're using we're using psychometric testing at the next stage. So we've put this process together to make sure that the person can deal with this type of organization. And then we've got the technical side. So they have that base level technical knowledge that we can build upon. So we've introduced that. And since we've introduced these techniques, I'm really pleased to say that our productivity has gone through the roof, and the product development is also massively accelerated.
And it sounds like good timing. Right before we jumped on this call, you said over the last year, it's actually been a big growth period for the business. So what have the impacts of COVID looked like for the business?
Well, COVID has made everything a lot harder. So we now have to deal with people that have been away, because having to isolate. Because of the nature of what we do, we have to be together, because the hardware that we work on is in the lab. So it's not really a type of business where we can work remotely. So that has become a challenge, and of course the health and safety at work stuff that we've had to consider. It's been tremendously difficult to get customers to site. It's because we would typically expect to be going out and doing demonstrations, talking at events, going to trade shows, that type of thing, and all that activity has stopped. So that's presented challenges along with recruiting. So interviewing people is hard work, and to be honest, the furlough scheme, not a massive fan, because that has introduced stagnation in the jobs market, where we could do with churn. The typical churn that you'd expect has been impacted by the furlough scheme. So the sooner that ends, the better. That businesses start getting back to normal and people start moving around again. But COVID has is an accelerator, I believe, for our business, because if we look at, if the argument is that the human is the vector for the virus, if we can take people out of supply chains, if we can take people out of the physical transmission of goods and services and replace them with robots, which essentially all drones are, then that's got to be a good thing. And you can see the NHS have adopted drones for delivery of medical products, and Amazon and DHL and all these other firms are now looking at how they can use drones to deliver parcels and data and other things like that. I just see COVID as being an accelerator for our business.
Absolutely. And what's next for the business over the next year or so?
We have a massively ambitious program that starts in 3 weeks. So we've just this week we announced the launch of our US brand. So we've got, with our investor, we've launched a brand called Starlink Sky Security, and that went live on Monday, and that's specifically focused at local government in the US and in Canada, and we're doing more work on that. And then in the coming weeks, we're going to be launching what's called our remote ID device. So it's a little transponder that you put on a drone so you can track it in real time, along with our new detection system. So the last 6 months, we've focused on getting through the home office testing. We're now focusing all of our effort onto delivering a brand new drone detection system, which I think will be world beating.
Incredible. And for those listening, where can they find out more about both yourself and the business?
So I'm very happy to talk to anybody on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best place to get me. So I speak a lot about what we're doing on LinkedIn. And if you want a business in more detail, the website is www.dronedefense.co.uk.